Hey everybody, welcome to week 244. And guess what? In 6 weeks, we'll be at 250, our 250th week anniversary. So join us live, and we will still broadcast that day, but we will be live from the karaoke studios where the Dumb Kings are going to be returning and for a live studio audience at the Hamilton, same place that we were for the 200th week anniversary and for the 100th week anniversary. So we're in a rut, but it's a great place to go. So anyway, we are going to talk about DOGE, but not what you think, probably. Yeah, we may talk a little bit about the government, but that's outside of our control. What we are going to talk about is how does this apply to business and maybe some of the impacts from the government toward business. But man, there's a whole lot of house cleaning that can go on within a business, and we will talk a little bit more about that. Now, before I toss it over to Jack, because we have some updates on the Corporate Transparency Act. Again, wow, wow, wow. It's just like a pickleball match. But Adam, I think you've got something that you need to talk about first, right?
Yeah, a couple things. So just an interesting observation that I was not expecting, that will be germane to this subject today. And again, we're going to try to keep it not political and focus on the business elements of efficiency studies. But we had a client that was, remember that with IRS exams, um, they're most often just random. Like you're just, hey, you got thrown into the statistical pool and they pulled you and now they're taking a sample, which makes sense because, I don't know about you, Jack, but the last time I checked, I self-report my taxes. Like nobody's double checking me.
Usually, every once in a while,
Yeah,
in
so
various
yeah.
years.
So the only way that you can make sure that, generally people are reporting accurately is if you take a statistically viable sample, to just say, hey, let's just double check. And that's kind of what feeds them into like, hey, these are other areas where we ought to look because generally people are always getting this wrong. So it's an acceptable process, even if it is a freaking pain in the ass if you're the person that gets selected. So this company got an email the other day from the auditor that says, in anticipation of a 12,000 person workforce reduction at the IRS, we have been advised to scale back operations. With that in mind, we are closing your audit. They hadn't even started the audit yet,
Woo!
really. And they just asked for information. So it's like the one, from my perspective, it's like victory party, at the same time, it's like, you know, you do feel bad for the fact that a lot of, these are human people who are generally, worried about
Yeah.
their jobs, sort of regardless of like whatever's happening. So that was just one interesting observation. I think from just my own view on, the whole process, one of the of Doge in general, two observations before we get into it. One is, you know, I remember very specifically, because I was a McCain guy, because he's from Arizona, plus he was a Maverick, but he was from Arizona and I'm from Arizona. So how could I not vote for the guy, right? So I remember very specifically in one of their debates, McCain said, we're going to do an across the board freeze on government spending, period.
Love it.
And I mean, so first off, imagine had we done that back in 2008. How good, how much
Yeah.
better, how much less of a deficit we'd have, today. But independent of that, um, Obama, parried back with, no, no, sir, you can't do that. You must use a scalpel to make some cuts. Well, guess what? We didn't have an across the board freeze and we didn't have any freaking scalpel cuts either. But
Yeah.
the point in saying all that is that I do, what if we can get the rhetoric aside? I mean, kind of everybody agrees that, hey, if there's inefficiency, as a person funding the inefficiency, I just assume there not be inefficiency. you know, in whatever we're doing. And then the second one that I think just from a strategy perspective of, hey, I'm just going to whack some people and kind of see what happens. You kind of hear about how, hey, that's Elon Musk's mode of operation, kind of what he did with Twitter. But in practical example, one of my favorite stories um, that'll resonate with Jack because he works with a lot of restaurant franchises is one of our most successful restaurateurs. He was trained in the Shomar system, which those guys have done a good job of training people.
Wow. Wow.
But it's like, man, how do you you are exhibit A, from a profitability standpoint, especially in kitchen labor, because that's where, if you don't know what you're doing, you know, the reason a lot of restaurants do bad is because, it's like, me and Gary, well, I do like to think that I know a lot, but Gary decides he wants to open a restaurant because it'd be pretty cool. So he
No.
hires a chef that's pretty good chef. And then the chef, I need this person, this person, this person, this person. I need a blah, 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 blah. Right? And Gary's like, well, okay. I mean, you're the expert in this area. But it's a bunch of BS. You don't need any of those people. So when I asked this guy, hey man, how are you getting it done? He's like, yeah, it's really easy. Every time that my chef asks for one extra cook, I take one away. Nothing ever goes wrong. like, got it. So they ask for another cook, and then you reduce the head count by one. Okay. It's like somehow we still get it done, with no quality problems, right? So it's like there's something to that strategy.
Yeah, well, speaking of restaurants, so my family's been in the restaurant business, my parents, my dad in particular. So started out with Kentucky Fried Chicken. I've told the story before. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, my teen years and earlier, and I actually met Colonel Sanders. I've had photos with him. I have his autograph when I was
Wow.
4 years
Cool.
old, or 6 years old. And then we moved here. He was CFO for Bojangles in the 80s. And then he opened up some fine dining restaurants with some relatives and then retired. But because he was in finance, it was his job to deal with costs specifically for restaurants that he was a part of or asked to help with. And it was like a game for him, and he would tell me, oh, you wouldn't believe my negotiations with this vendor or with that vendor. And it was just there right in front of us, and it was there for the asking. But they're not going to tell you necessarily about it unless they want more of your business. But if they got you hooked at a certain price for whatever it is, for shrimp or whatever that you're getting from U.S. foods, then they're not necessarily going to say, oh, and by the way, we can do better on that price if they already have you locked in. So you think, and so that's similarly to. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt if you're not done with your tirade, but I
No,
have a.
you're good, dude. I love it.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. And it really wasn't a tirade; it was more commentary than anything else. So it was very,
Right.
very calm. So yeah, similarly, I was thinking about, and I've been thinking about this for months, is that I know on my credit card statements that we have two Audible accounts apparently and you get one credit per month. And so I have a lot of book listening to do. But one of them is my daughter's using that one account and I'm using the other account, which we should probably merge together at some point. We have every subscription I think possible except for HBO Max. And I asked the kids, are you still using? Oh yeah, well, there's that one program on that one platform that we can't
Yeah.
stop paying for that. And so I'm like, okay, is it better to, and this is kind of part of the process, some of the things we'll talk about is it better to pay the freight for that one show, like buy the series on a different platform versus paying $20 a month for a year for the platform
Right.
just to watch that particular series for 2 months? And so those are the kind of thinking that, we're talking about. And as we relate it back to the whole DOGE thing and the government waste, I will say that I have a friend who commented upon the post with respect to DOGE and love her, and we're good friends. And she basically called me out on the language that was used and kind of made it sound like I was being dismissive or maybe political, and that wasn't her intent. She just wanted to make sure that I wasn't in this presentation and otherwise being dismissive of the bad things that are happening with all the slashing. Because if you read the post that we had that got all of you to come watch, it's it was, hey, all this stuff's going on. There is good in some of the stuff that's going on. There's a lot of bad and maybe not thought out as well, or understanding the consequences to certain citizens or non-citizens about, just basically tell them, yeah, sorry, you don't have a job tomorrow, and good luck with that pregnancy, and all kinds of things that we are seeing in the news as consequences. But there is waste, and we were trying to translate that, or interpolate that into the business context. So just wanted to kind of say that as well. This has been on my mind for a while. And when we had the guest speaker that was talking about, and he mentioned about asking for forgiveness from the federal government. And I was thinking, oh man, I just heard a song that morning and I've been holding on to this for a while. So I will give away a gift card to the person who tells me the name of the song is going to be obvious, but who sings the song. And the lyrics are of the chorus. It's been 1 week since you looked at me, cocked your head to the side and said, I'm angry. 5 days since you laughed at me, saying, get back together, come back and see me. 3 days since the living room, I realized it's all my fault, but couldn't tell you. Yesterday, you'd forgiven me, but it'll still be 2 days till I say I'm sorry.
Bare naked ladies. Yeah.
All
So
right, Alex.
Mauricio was the fastest one on. He said BNL, and then Alex came right behind him. Bare naked ladies.
Okay, I can do two. So anyway, and that goes to your comment, Adam, about the perps or the client that basically the IRS has said, yeah, never mind. We were in the middle of kind of checking you out, and we're just like, okay, so kind of like forgiveness without even thinking about the sin, essentially, I guess. So anyway, so that's all I got for now, and we can move into
Well,
whatever you'd like.
yeah, we'll go into this. But Jack, can you take us back to the pickleball match of the Corporate Transparency Act?
Yeah,
And
I was
what's the
hoping you might
latest?
forget about that, but yes, it has to be discussed. And it's funny because as soon as we received notification about it, there was discussion, my corporate practice group, as to, okay, are we going to knee-jerk react immediately, or are we going to wait maybe 48 hours or so and see if maybe something else happens? Because that's kind of the way this has been going, ping-ponging back and forth. And so what happened was on February 18th, so 2 days ago, the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Texas. So recall that there were two different matters going on in Texas, and one had been resolved, and it basically said, yeah, you do have to report, but this other one had not been resolved. And so the federal government took the position that, okay, well, it's kind of confusing, so everything is on hold until this second matter gets resolved. And so what happened is that the federal government basically appealed the stay order like they did in the first case, and they won. And so the previously issued preliminary nationwide injunction on enforcement of the CTA, which is both of the filing and the actual enforcement of it, is now back on. So it's mandatory to report this stuff. Now, what they've done is they've extended the deadline. So make sure that I don't mangle this. So the new reporting deadline for most companies now is March 21st. So they basically said, we'll give you a month to get your stuff together. Hopefully you've been doing what we suggested and have been suggesting that you do, which is get your stuff together just in case. And it may be that 2 weeks from now, never mind. So you again have a choice to do nothing until it gets closer to that March deadline to see if it gets reversed again, or you go ahead and file your stuff with the federal government. And we've talked about before people's perspectives on that, which is I'm not going to give the government any more than they're asking for when they ask for it. And then others on the other end are like, they have all this they have all this information, putting it in one place really is just making their jobs easier. But now with, all these, and in fact, the IRS now I think has a unified system, and that's part of the problem with, they're saying, well, we can't give DOGE and the White House access to this because it has much more information than they need. So, and then for companies that were formed after February 18th, so 2 days ago, you have to file within 30 days. So they're re-implementing the 30-day rule for companies that have been formed in the past 48 hours moving forward. And then there are extended deadlines, as you may recall, for businesses that are in disaster areas. So the people out in California with the wildfires, people up in the North Carolina mountains with the flooding from several months ago. So there's a separate timing requirements for those individuals and those business owners that is extended beyond and is different than what I just said for the timing for the rest of us. So that's the summary for now until maybe tomorrow.
3 o'clock today.
When it stops snowing.
Thank you, Jack. One thing about it, I mean, there's a perpetual news cycle for the past month because of the veracity of stuff. I mean, good grief. It's dizzying. In some ways, it's really great, and in other ways, it's like, wow, okay. So,
Well,
because
it's
there's
good for the
broken
lawyers and
glass.
for the companies that are putting together webinars on this stuff, because now they can go ahead and continue with that. Because as soon as we received an advertisement for a company that is helping you with your FinCEN compliance, and come listen to this 1 hour webinar about
Oh
what you now need to
gosh.
do. So people are capitalizing over the new announcement,
So
definitely.
you can listen for an hour to an advertorial where they're going to charge you 500 bucks or whatever, or you can spend 10 minutes and go do it yourself. Having done it, and I spent money with my personal attorney, um, not I didn't go through Jack because they weren't doing it, and my personal attorney said, "Man, I don't really want to take your money." I'm like, "Dude, I don't have the time. Would you please do it?" And he said, "Okay." So he gave me a decent deal, but it was still 500 bucks or whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous after I did it the second time. And it's like, it's 10 minutes. So, anyway, hopefully you guys have been paying attention to this because we have really tried to. Now, some of your situations are far more complicated when you've got lots of, changing and moving parts of different ownership, people ownership coming in, moving out, multiple entities. That's a whole different ball of wax. But nonetheless, you got to be careful on the scam artists. We saw that with PPP in particular, and the ERTC, especially with ERTC. Evidently, I think they're still taking some money and doing some filings on that, aren't they, Adam?
Yeah. Yeah. So you can, I mean, the for the years in question, you could still file.
Yeah. So, but make sure you use somebody that's very conservative. We use a group called ERC Today, but they've scaled their operations back so much that, like, they're, I think, still helping, but they don't have nearly the staff from the heyday because it's a very
Yep.
temporary thing, and they knew it would be. But
Yeah.
um, so, Adam, you want to go into a little bit more on, all right, so how's DOGE affecting you? Um, let's start with, do we have anything from stuff that's been coming out of DC that might be impacting businesses and their owners? But then we can move into some of our own, what we've seen in our own house, but also in other places where things just start accumulating, and before you know it, you've got this mountain of stuff that you didn't realize that you're continuing to pay for. But oh yeah, and it wasn't because somebody was being malfeasant. It was just because nobody was paying attention.
Yeah. From the government perspective, it's kind of hard to say, just flippantly, we're gonna have a DOGE dividend. I really wish they would just pay off some of the deficit. That'd be great.
Me
You
too.
can use my money to pay down, my share of the $300,000 worth of debt that I have hanging over my head on my share of the US taxpayer federal deficit. So anyway, that tirade aside. Now, I think from this perspective, um, you know, from my observation, people get complacent, because, in other words, like they know, you know, they know that there's something that they're probably wasting money on, but they think, it's kind of tiny or blah, 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 whatever, right? And, there are two things to consider there. One is, hey, that's real cash, that if you add them up, adds them up. And that's one. And then the second is that, the if you then say, okay, well, if I take those savings, which are straight bottom line profits, not only do I get the cash associated with it, but if I then multiply that times 7, 8, or 9, which is the value of my company, now all of a sudden, me being lazy costs me $1 million.
Yeah.
And I don't know about, Jack, but when I'm trying to share that with the kids about how that's just not going to be part of the Boatsman family estate because I was lazy, you know, boatsman kids get a little pissed off. Say, hey, what's, what's going on with that? And I thought what would be helpful is if we just talked about, well, what are some common areas to look for? And Jack kind of alluded to it, when he started talking about the Audible subscriptions. And in our world, and in most companies, those would be the software as a service contracts. So I will give you some real world examples, that are quite embarrassing from BGW. Well, actually, it wasn't BGW. It was like another CPA firm dude that I knew that, just
Yeah.
said, hey, dude, I can't believe I did this.
Theoretically.
And I said, no, I totally have my crap together way better than you do, man. This would never happen to BGW.
It was CDW.
Yeah, CDW.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So an employee leaves and you turn off their computer access. Did you turn off their Office 365 subscription? Because if, for example, just, telling a friend, if you didn't turn off their Office 365 subscription, that was $1,200 a year. If that goes on for multiple years, that starts to
And
add
multiple
up.
people.
Yeah. If, for example, you had, because you were kind of eager beavers, you had more licenses than you had people in a department, to a piece of software, that could perhaps be a thing. If, for example, you had software that one person was using for one specific niche thing on a client, that the software itself costs 5 times more than what you were charging the client for the service, perhaps that would be a problem. Maybe, for example, again, asking for a friend, your software vendor, offered, Office 365 licensing, but you're already paying for that. But the, software provider that you were using, just set you up with Office 365 subscription. So now you have 2 of them per employee, that you're paying for, but you didn't know that, because nobody was actually looking at the bill, to see that that was happening, even though in the initial contract, you checked a box saying, I don't need that. but they set it up anyway. I'm just saying those might be, a few areas where perhaps other CPA firms, not BGW, have had problems on software as a service.
I'll give you another example from another law firm, a different law firm. So imagine the scenario. And so, as you guys know, I'm a nerd. And so over the course of the decades I've been with the firm, I'm the leading edge, cutting edge, and beta tester lab rat of new technology because I have a knack for finding problems before they occur and before they're implemented firm-wide. And so imagine a scenario where you have a test group, and so you pay for the licenses. Let's say it's 10, and then you implement it, but only maybe 100 users, let's say 50 users are going to use it. And then you get to that 50, you issue those licenses to those 50 people, and then you have add-ons. You can add those on. And then over the course of time, you've added on 10 people as new people come on board, but yet the original 50 people, some of them are no longer there. So you're still paying for a 50 pack license. You're paying more and more incrementally. So the marginal cost increases over the course of time, where you could have said, okay, we're going to absorb those 6 in the 50 that the person is no longer there. So those are the kind of things too that, you just, because that's the way we've always been doing it. We assume that, okay, all those 50 licenses were being used, and we'll just keep on adding on, adding on, adding on. And then this firm's librarian, who's in charge of the subscription, said, why are we doing this? And it's kind of like, the teenage boy answer. So we fixed it. That law firm fixed it. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you got, 100 employees that are all using software. I mean, like that crap adds up. I mean, I would suspect there could be anywhere between $25,000 and $100,000 in software as a service. That's just, BS subscriptions, that exist that are unnecessary. So that's one of my favorites. I will give you another one of my favorites. Again, this is just wouldn't have been a CPA firm that I know.
Hypothetically speaking,
it was like, a dude down the street. So got some fancy new copiers that were set to save some money, which is great. And then the print options were set to print in color, not black and white. Even though we were printing what appeared to be black and white copies. But there was a 20, and the CPA firm was a paperless office. Yeah, some idiots still like to print the stuff and flip through it. I know that never happens in a law firm, Jack, even though people have 3 freaking monitors. And just perhaps those copies had a 10-cent per page price differential. 4 years. I'm sure that's never happened at Shoemaker either, has it, Jack?
No, I maybe at this other law firm, it's like, who the F is using all the cyan, or is it cayenne color canisters?
Yeah.
And then, so yeah.
You got Shaq over there, filling up your color canisters. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good times. So that's another one. I will give you another example. Again, this is Jack, I'm sure this never happened, at a CPA firm that you've ever heard of. You got to have something. You got to have professional liability insurance. I mean, we could get sued, right, Jack? So you've got the renewal policy where they just increase the value of the occurrence automatically without you. I mean, it's not automatic. I mean, you actually had to, like sign off on it,
Read
right?
it.
But it's like buried in the terms. Like, hey, you're getting bigger. I mean, your likelihood of having a big thing happen, is more risky, right? So we need to up, the value of the insurance policy to where, hey, you get sued for $1 million, we'll cover it. Now it's $2 million and we'll cover it. Except for that's per occurrence of claim. Our clients aren't any bigger. So the per claim value hasn't really changed. And by the way, there's a $50,000 deductible in that policy that we've never had claims, and the only legal expenses we've ever incurred when there was a chance for a claim never met $50,000. So one might ask, why would we not look at an increased deductible threshold since we're never hitting it anyway? In addition to decreasing the dollar amount per coverage. And I don't know, I mean, for this hypothetical CPA firm, it's possible that could save, $40,000 a year in insurance premiums. I don't know. I mean, I heard from a guy down the street, that it was possible.
Yeah, so back to the hypothetical law firm. How about this one?
It's like,
So let's say
I hate this, by the way. It's like embarrassing. It's getting recorded.
I know we're like airing all of our dirty laundry, and it just
Yeah.
but it feels therapeutic a little bit. So
Yeah, that's right.
because we're helping others not make the same mistakes. So let's say that firm, a smaller firm, boutique firm, intellectual property firm merges into law firm, and they're using a docketing software. Happens to be the same docketing software that we are using. And so, but, separate cost centers, at least initially, until, the dust kind of settles. And so you continue on with operating the business as a standalone business, the acquired company. And lo and behold, it just continues on and time passes. And now you're paying for two subscriptions, one your own and one for the other law firm that's been absorbed into the core law firm. And so, the question was, okay, well, why is that? And again, the answer, So the solution was, okay, let's bring that data into our account, and then we can terminate that account. And obviously it was not insignificant cost savings, because of those programs are very expensive, because they're very functional. I mean, they produce due dates. I mean, now they have AI built into them, kind of thing. And so now, and I will say that there was an instance with a different transaction, a different group that came on board with us that had a different software program. Yeah, I would say that, all of us are generally, as humans, creatures of habit, and we don't necessarily like change when we're good with what we have going on. That also applies to changing software. I mean, the resistance over the course of time, again, in the decades that I've been one of the nerds in our electronic environment, that the resistance to, well, that works. I like my DOS screen with the blinky cursor and everything. Well, no, there's this new thing called Windows, and it's going to make your life much better. So, the resistance to change. And so there was at least initially good reason to keep it, but then kind of a convincing of, hey, this is a better platform because, our insurance company likes it better because it's a better platform, kind of thing. And then so eventually it became unified. So there are reasons for keeping things separate, but what happens sometimes is over the course of time, you forget that it's separate. And then you have, the finance people just paying stuff because there's a belief that it's needed, and there's not an understanding of how the opportunities to integrate become. So, sometimes business owners or clients will have an audit and ask outsiders who are professionals in knowing, how money works, how money flows, but specifically for whatever it is at hand, whether it's supply chain, whether it is electronics, whether it is dealing with employees necessarily and what they have going on. So, to Adam's example, when, you have employees and you have two different subscriptions, and it's like, why pay for two things when you really only need one?
Yeah,
So
that's right. Go ahead, Gary.
yeah, I was just gonna say, I want you to go back in the Wayback Machine of almost 5 years ago. 5 years ago, March the 17th, if I remember right, when we started these things. But go back to lockdown, the world's falling apart. We don't know what's going on. And I want you to think about the mindset that you had in survival. We at BGW had daily stand-ups with our leadership team. We had a plan in place that we had kind of been putting together, but like it ramped up real fast on what are we going to do? What's our first cuts? And by the way, it was leadership team and owners taking pay cuts to keep things going. But like that was our priority. But man, we looked at everything, right, Adam? I mean, we went
Yeah.
down through every freaking jot and tittle because survival was on the line. Well, now let's fast forward to 5 years and like, oh, things have kind of normalized. We had some PPP money that flowed into a lot of companies. And, if you made it through the gauntlet, not everybody did, unfortunately, but if you did, things are pretty good. What I remember in my first turnaround when I was 28, my partner, who I didn't realize until I said I do, that he was so far in debt that he didn't even have the money to go bankrupt. We had to dig out of the hole. So we looked at everything. And when we came in second in a big pitch against four or three other bigger, much bigger firms, we got second, but it still pays zero, the same as last. We said, I'm like, we got to take pay cuts. So we took 25% pay cuts across the board and everybody quit. Well, it's just him and me and and his assistant that was part-time, and she was working, I think, even for free at the point, just so that we could kind of get past it. But it was lean. Like we knew exactly what we had and what we didn't have, but we knew this is the hill we got to climb, and we did. Fast forward 2.5 years later, 3 years later, when things are really good, and I keep plowing my money back in because I'm buying equipment for my designers and whatever. That's when he started paying himself under the table through his wife.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Me-
but we were paying attention when it was tight. I wasn't paying attention when things were good. I'm just assuming he's doing the right thing and it's all good. Oh no. And I'm not saying, he just got caught in a series of stupid choices, and we're all capable of it. That's the thing. That's the terrifying thing. We're all capable of it. But some checks and balances don't even have to mean that you have an external audit and the cost of that. But you should have a couple people doing some internal audits, questioning some stuff. And, this fictitious CPA firm that we were talking about, some of these embarrassing moments, we just didn't do it until that individual was gone. And then we're like, whoa, no wonder. So that
yeah,
would be my admonition to anybody listening. Like, especially when things are good, take time once a year at a minimum to just kind of go through and challenge some assumptions and have a couple people looking at it and asking why. And it's not because we're going to find, we're looking for a boogeyman. Yeah, I mean, Adam, we've seen companies where they had trusted bookkeepers or somebody, a good friend, or, whatever, where they're pilfering. And they start small usually, and then it kind of grows over time, and you never know. And then the devastation hits, not just financially, but just trust. That's the thing that is a killer.
yeah.
So Go ahead.
No, I'd agree. I'll move on to, some other favorite examples. Again, Jack, this would never happen in a law firm. This gets more to the, hey, we've always done it this way, or, what, the, one of my favorite things that this gets a little bit more to the labor efficiency. One of my favorite things to hear um from someone, because I'm sure in the law industry it's nothing like the CPA industry. As people get more experience, they get a little bit more efficient at what they do. Now 9 women can't make a baby in a month, you know, that doesn't exist. But at the same time, what takes somebody in the first year doesn't take them quite as long in year 3. Yet
Yeah.
for some reason they get hung up on, I did 100 things last year, I should only do 100 things this year. Like that. So that's sort of efficiency item number 1, to say, hey, why is that true? 100 should actually be 120, in the third year of doing this. So I think that's just observation number 1 that we found. Observation number 2 is, you get people that are so used to doing things a certain way. I'm sure, again, there's no law firm equivalent of this, but in a CPA firm, perhaps not BGW, but another firm, it could be that some people think that it's really important that when Gary wants to drop off his tax documents, that we set an appointment with Gary to have him hand his documents to us and review each one of them with Gary in painstaking detail. And then upon completion of Gary's tax return, to set another appointment with him to go over that tax return with him in painstaking detail. And then, at $600 an hour, then turn around and say, yeah, but Gary's not going to pay, $2,000 for this tax return. He's only going to pay $800 for it. But this is just what Gary expects. So we got to do it. It perhaps never dawned on these people to say, well, why don't you ask Gary what he wants? And if he's willing to pay for that, we'll give it to him. Otherwise, ask him what he wants. And then, lo and behold, you find out that actually only about 5% of the Garys actually want what Gary was doing.
Yeah.
I'm sure that nothing like that
Assumptions.
has ever happened in a law firm.
No, and also, okay, making that assumption and then billing a client for that and them saying, what? Kind of thing. And so that never happens ever. But it's and I would say, more so for new clients as well, that you manage expectations. But um, going back to, the what you said about, the managing the cost and managing the expectations, and the making sure that people understand that, what is the cost structure and what is it going to, um, what is the menu of services that you are going to provide, and have the leeway to say, and I'm going way off on a tangent, but make sure that, and I tell clients this, that this is our estimate of fees. And however, for example, with litigation, I have no idea how the other side's going to react to this. And they may try to engage in a financial wherewithal with you. And by you picking this fight as a plaintiff, you will have to engage in that, because once they file a counterclaim, they are now on offense for that particular issue. And even if you dismiss your claims as the original plaintiff, you're not out of that situation, out of that lawsuit, unless they dismiss their counterclaims. And so just kind of knowing what you're getting into, and having that discussion with your customers, when there is variation amongst what you can provide to them.
Right on. So here's a question for anybody in the audience. By the way, Jim, he says you don't have to send him a card. He's good with having pride, not the prize.
All right,
Hey,
I'll take
pride
them off
goes
the
before
list.
the fall, man. I don't know. So anyway, I'm curious from the gallery if you've had examples where that might be as not quite as ridiculous or even more ridiculous than the ones that we've just talked about that you think might benefit somebody else. Would sure love hearing your thoughts here. So you can hit us in the chat if you want to harass us or hit us with a Q&A. And if there are any other questions that are on your mind for taking time out of your day to join us for week 244, I would love to hear you. So thank you, Joseph. He says, uh, we in telecom have been doing cost management for many years. This is common among companies buying or closing offices. Well, that's good. Um, and I think, it is interesting when you are in due diligence on a merger or an acquisition. And I still don't believe there are such things as mergers. Somebody got acquired. Um, Usually the acquiring company goes through everything with a fine-tooth comb and questions all of that. But I still wonder because I was in that private equity world, and I still wonder how much, especially in the good times, we weren't monitoring our own.
Oh yeah, no, I know. I mean, so now we're kind of getting into um, well that's great stuff, way to go, Crespin. Now that you know that, what would you do about it? And I would also say, like, look, I'm not um, we're not perfect at it at BGW, but we're striving to get better. You know, I think a best practice would be to, because it's a lot to bite off. So it's best if you get in some sort of um a periodic review. I mean, if you could start with each major functional area,
Yeah.
we're going to have a rotation of every other year looking at the expense structure and then also looking at the process to say, hey, is there stuff that we could not be doing, or is otherwise causing bottlenecks and inefficiencies. If you could just start with just every other year. So every year you're doing something. 1 year I'm looking at costs, 1 year I'm looking at process, and then map that out on a quarterly basis, meaning like, you know, again, if I were, an accounting firm per se, I might say, the audit department is, quarter two, the tax department is quarter three, you know, the administration area is quarter four, and then the bookkeeping department is, quarter one or something like that. I'm just making something up, but effectively putting yourself on a rotation of being systematic about we're going to go through everything every other year, in a rotation in every department. And maybe you don't find anything, but I think if you kind of challenge yourself to say, hey, can we get, just a couple percentage points better, what we do, all that stacks up.
Yeah, and I would say that it's important to plan it out because thinking about it is daunting and can create um actual psychological and actual paralysis. Like, okay, no, I'm not going to do that. It's just going to take. So if you bite off small pieces, put the plan together, bite off small pieces, then the bottleneck or the hurdle becomes you actually doing it. Like, oh crap, it's Q2 or the end of second quarter, and I haven't done what I was supposed to do, and I know I have something else to do for Q3, and it's just so the discipline to do that. I had a neuron fire and then I forgot it and then I remembered it, something that Gary said. And when you were talking about how we all got really tight and were closely monitoring and had to make certain decisions during COVID. And a lot of us put together the monitoring system. And it was okay, for example, our forms for asking for money to go sponsor this or become a member of that became more than one page, essentially. And it was okay. We and it wasn't that the firm was looking for a way to deny spending money or making it harder. It was they wanted us to make sure that we were being thoughtful about where we were going to spend our money, that we didn't have an open checkbook as much as we might have before COVID. Not that we really did, but I'll give you an example where, so our current managing partner, we've been friends for a long time. And he knows, my history with the firm. He knows that I don't go on boondoggles. He knows I don't spend money. He knows that if I have dinner and my wife is there, I'll probably not ask for reimbursement for her meal, maybe not even my meal, kind of thing, because it's sort of a pseudo date night. Um, that not from her perspective. She's like, no, absolutely not. That does not count as date night. So you still don't, you have the obligation to do that at another time. So, what has happened, what I've seen is those processes and procedures have backed off and they haven't been pursued. So, for example, I needed to spend some money. I went directly to the managing partner and he said, yes, but you have to go through the process. And at first I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And I was here at this firm before you were, is the first thought that came to me, right? And then I'm like, okay, totally willing to do that because I know I'm doing what's right, but I also want other people to do that. I don't want other people to not enforce the system and go through proper procedures and put down, okay, yeah, I am going to accidentally, purposely bump into these three people that are going to be at this meeting, and that here's the potential ROI, or it's a continuation of a relationship. Here's the amount of fees that we brought in 2024 in order for me to justify this expense with this organization so that I can sit next to him or her at a lunch once a month. So those are the kind of things that you need to continue doing that I've seen have kind of gone by the wayside a little bit because, again, it's a trusting relationship and I'm going to do the right thing, but I want to make sure that someone is watching over this and someone says, okay, yeah, that's a good way to spend money. And so you have, I don't want to say watchdogs because that has a negative connotation to it, but somebody
Yeah.
that is saying, okay, hey, Jack, I see that you want to spend money on this organization. Did you know that your partner down the hall has just joined up with this other organization that is in a similar industry? So you may want to talk about maybe either leveraging off of his membership in this organization and you doing something differently, or maybe a collaboration between the two of you so that you can efficiently use and block and tackle who you need to as between the two of you. So I'm very much a proponent of having a structure and not just saying, okay, yeah, that we're probably going to get a client out of that. So let's go spend the money.
Yeah. And it's still communication. Isn't that funny? I mean, communication is central to all of this. There's all these assumptions. Oh, well, you got my mind meld. You should have known. Well, unless I talk about it. So Joseph, he was still writing when I was talking about his stuff. So here's kind of the rest of what he said. He said they ran across a company that was paying the same bill since 1999, paying $600 for 3 megabyte internet service. I and he said it's also common to find fax numbers, former employees, voicemails, and unused internet circuits costing some companies over $21,000 in monthly expenses. That is crazy. And then Rosemary also said, she said, we have heavy travel and make sure that we're maximizing trips. It's important instead of hitting one job, hit multiple and make sure that you're mindful with your hotels, etc. I mean, it's just good common sense. But again, we can get a little lazy, a little sloppy, and a little, cutting the corners when things are good. That's okay.
Yeah, and it's easy. Well, a proud dad moment has been when my adult kids tell me, I went on to discount codes. I did look for discount codes for this
Yeah,
or for that before I purchased it, and I saved 15%, which is usually not a lot, but it is okay. Get in that mindset. Well, it takes 2 seconds to find a code and put it in, and it works or it doesn't, and then you move on, and you've wasted, a little bit of time, but may have saved a little bit of money. And so, those uh, doing those kind of things, looking at, when I go somewhere, we're a Marriott family because yeah, my wife travels a lot and that's their preferred vendor. And so, but I do go on Travelocity, even though the company's paying for it and I'm getting her perks, so I'm getting her whatever rate that she gets, I still look. The day before I go on a trip, for a rental car, maybe 2 days before, I make sure that I'm getting the best rate because I can cancel it and rebook and get the same exact car for maybe $20 less because they have inventory at that time that they want to basically get out the door and be used at a particular airport. So, doing those little things, it's nominal in the moment, but they add
that's a
up
great
over the
idea.
course of time. And if you have a culture of doing that and have your employees and your fellow owners doing those things, the little bits add up to a lot.
So, final question that just came in here from Jorge. He says, how do you jumpstart your company to have an efficiency mentality? Oftentimes, employees have a lack of an ownership mentality, or they think that they're not going to be taken serious about their ideas on how to become more efficient, and that's why they don't bring it up. Ooh,
Yeah, so that's a great question. What I can tell you that we do at BGW, and we could always be better about it, and it's been helpful, is that once every few months at an all company meeting, we just ask our employees, just straight up, what's broken. You
yeah.
tell us what's broken. We don't make any comment. You know, we just write it down. And then later we'll go back and say, here's what we did with the comments. Because usually there's some alignment. The second is we, you know, when we do those departmental level reviews, it's the whole department, and we're asking them what's broke. We're probing what's broken in a process in this department that needs to be fixed. So that's a long way of saying that, you know, our experience has been the likelihood that Jack of his own fruition is going to come up and say, "Hey, boss, man, I want to let you know, man, there's a better way we could do that." Is probably close to zero. Like, you'd be lucky if that happens. That'd be great. But if you actually create a structure where you're pulling the idea out of Jack in a non-defensive, and that's key, is a non-defensive mode. Like, yeah, Jack, I mean, that's really great, but we thought about that years ago, and here's why that's never going to work. Yeah, that's kind of silly. Like, you can imagine all the reasons I could get Jack to shut down and say, well, I guess what idea I'm never bringing up again. So you have to, you know, half of what we found, you have to do to make it work is you have to create the structure where they can offer the idea. The other half is really up on the leadership team to keep their freaking mouth shut, and just take the feedback, openly, and do something with it.
Yeah.
I know we're out of time, but I want to share something that I'm not supposed to share, and we may have to delete this off the tape. But
Oh,
so this is an internal web page of ours, and it pops up. It is on startup. It comes up. This is the first thing. This is like essentially the screen. But
It's
what you'll
called the
see is
shoebox.
yeah, very cute, right? It's called a shoebox. I didn't come up with that. I wish I did. But you'll notice down here that, there's shout outs. So we encourage our employees to say, hey, look, this person did awesome, did this, they stayed late, whatever it is, recognition of birthdays, anniversaries, anything that all these actually that are floating around are posts that have been posted on LinkedIn and other places. And then like, hey, get your time in kind of thing. And so welcome to the firm. So my point is create an environment that provides for collaboration and provides for, appreciation and thoughtfulness. And so this is overt. Some of the more covert things would be put a suggestion. If someone's afraid to say something, put a suggestion box out so that it can be confidentially, hey, have you thought about this? Or there's this problem, that problem, or suggestions to make things more efficient. So you have to encourage that environment. And doing nothing or saying nothing is not encouragement. It is basically questionable as to should I say something, should I not say? You have to give your people, your colleagues, permission, explicit permission to share ideas, good and bad.
All right, that's time, guys. If anybody came on late, this will be up on Shoemaker's YouTube site, and it'll be up on the BGW CPA YouTube site later on this afternoon. So thank you for taking time out of your day. Join us next week for week 245, and I will not be on it because I will be in Kansas, where I don't even know if we have electricity. Yeah, we do. But I'm going to be celebrating my mother's 90th birthday. So how about that? So anyway,
Happy birthday.
You guys have a good one. Thank you for the time. And thanks, Joseph. Yeah, I like the shirt too. It's pretty funny. All right, you guys have a wonderful day. See
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.